What's happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. Today we're in the garage with the M4GTS. We're going to talk about some things that you should look out for if you are interested in buying a BMW M4GTS. Now, there are a lot of things that you should do out of precaution anytime you are looking to buy a used car. I'm not going to get into many of those specifics because they're sort of general. I want this video to be a little bit more specific to the M4GTS because there are some things that you should look out for if you're interested in buying one of these cars used. My M4GTS is a 2016. It currently has 30,000 miles on the odometer, which is actually on the higher side for an M4GTS, being that the majority of people that buy these cars, they either don't drive them, they're like collectors and they just keep the miles really low, and the other realm of people that buy these cars typically only buy them to have a track car. So the car really won't see many daily driven miles, but it will see obviously track miles. I think if you're looking to buy one of these cars used, it really first of all depends on what you are looking to do with the car. Do you want it to be a track car? Do you just want like a fun weekend driver? Or are you a collector? You're looking for the pristine, low mileage, and maybe best version of an M4GTS. If you're just looking to buy one of these cars to own it or track it, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if the car has already been tracked, as long as proper maintenance has been taken care of on the car. BMW did make these cars from the factory to be track cars. That was really their intended purpose, to have a track car that basically had license plates on it. So one of the most obvious things when buying a used car is, of course, get a pre-purchase inspection. Now, this is more of a general topic, but you know, if you're looking to buy a car with some miles on it, you should definitely take it to a local shop that you trust or your local dealership and have them perform a pre-purchase inspection where they will go over everything on the car, make sure the brakes are good, make sure the oil changes have been done, make sure there are no obvious leaks, and then in addition to that, you should, of course, get a Carfax on the vehicle and look at the history of the car itself. So if you are buying this car used, you can in fact go to the dealership and request a warranty vehicle inquiry where they will give you a printout of basically everything that the car came with from factory, and then of course its ownership history, as long as it was taken, you know, back to that dealership and everything was recorded. So I was able to look up what this car had done to it over the past few years, and it was in fact a local car here in North Carolina, and you can really go through the entire thing and see every maintenance history that was done through BMW. Now, like I said, this car has 30,000 miles. It looks like this person was taking it to the local BMW dealership until about 18,500 miles. So I've owned this car for a couple of months now, and I've been doing a ton of research online, looking up this car, trying to figure out what are the most common issues that people have with the M4GTS, because there are some specific features to the M4GTS that sets it apart from your normal F82 M4. And after doing a lot of extensive research, I noticed that it seemed that the most common failure point and issue that people were having with their M4GTSs was in fact in the water injection system. So if you're able to look up your maintenance history and you see something like this, water injection permanent malfunction, there was an issue with the M4GTSs where the water injection system would fail on people. Now, the easiest way to tell if your water injection system is in fact working in your M4GTS is take it out for a drive, let the car get up to operating temperatures, throw on your sports display, and that water injection system should be kicking in only under wide open throttle at 5,000 RPMs up to red line. So BMW added the water injection system to this car to provide extra cooling, and when the system would kick in, it would increase the boost and allow the car to get up to its full potential of 500 horsepower. So if you throw on your sports display, you're able to tell under wide open throttle, once the car is warmed up, that you should be able to see the power dial hitting 500 horsepower. I suggest doing a few wide open pulls to make sure that you are seeing that number, but if you are wide open throttle and you are up to operating temperatures and you are seeing, you know, 420, 430, then you most certainly do have an issue with your water injection system. The other obvious way to check for this is to scan for codes. If there is some sort of issue happening with your water injection system, it will come up in the codes. If you are frequently getting the error that you need to keep refilling the water injection tank and you already have distilled water in the tank, then that is also going to be a telltale sign that you're having an issue with your injection system. So the system is located under here in the back, and obviously you should only be using distilled water in this. What a lot of people will do when they buy these used is, just as a precaution, they will actually empty all of the water that is in the tank currently, just because you don't know who owned it before you, especially if you're not buying the car from a BMW dealership. Some people just, they make dumb decisions and they might just put in normal water, which can cause issues to the pump, the tank, the filters, or even the water injectors up front. So I think a good rule of thumb is, if you're gonna buy one of these cars, just go ahead and empty out all of the water that is currently in the tank, and then go ahead and throw in distilled water. I actually just filled mine up the other day, and then I went out and did a bunch of spirited pulls, and I can clearly tell that it is in fact drinking the distilled water, so that is good. Some people also don't realize it, but there's a little filter right here, and this is to make sure that, one, the water doesn't splash out, and two, it captures any larger pieces of debris, dirt, or grime so they don't get into the injection system. I really haven't had to fill this up much. I'm not driving around beating the hell out of the car really, but you definitely want to check your tank and make sure that if you are driving wide open throttle or on the track, that the injection system is in fact working and that the car is taking in the distilled water. So one of the main failure points of this car is the water injection system block. Now, if this fails on you, hopefully you are still under warranty, and that's why I say it's important to check, see if it was ever replaced on your car. So mine was in fact replaced at 18,500 miles, which is really, really good for me because this car currently at 30,000 miles is out of warranty. And if I had to pay for one of these water injection blocks, it would be extremely expensive. I think the part alone is like $3,500. I've seen quotes from BMW for $5,000, $6,000 to do this job. And the new block that they actually use in this car is a different part number. So BMW probably knew that there was some sort of issue with the first round of blocks for this injection system. They created a updated version of it, and they would replace it under warranty if your car was in fact having the malfunction. What you want to look for is the water injection permanent malfunction. That's a good way to tell if it was in fact replaced. So mine was replaced. I'm very, very thankful for that. I didn't want to have to do that myself. In addition to that, there's actually a filter right inside of here, and that is called the stone filter. Now, what you want to do is replace that routinely, because what can happen is the filter itself can calcify. And if that calcifies, it will create issues in your water injection system. And it seems that they actually calcify quite often. So I actually just ordered 2 stone filters from BMW to have on hand. Once I get them in, I'll replace it with the first one, and then I'll just have another one on deck, and I'll probably end up replacing it again in 5,000 miles or something like that. So you sort of want to treat that like an oil change. Just routinely check it, make sure it's good, make sure it's not corroded or calcified, and go ahead and replace it when you can. Like I said before, a great way to test it is to just get it out on the road, and you will know if the water injection system is working. If you are hitting the 500 horsepower, this thing is pulling like a freight train between 5,000 and 7,500 RPMs. It is actually a pretty dramatic difference when it hits the higher boost levels and it's just pulling at watt. So this water injection system right here is definitely the most common issue that I see in these cars. If you are looking to buy this car, try and see if the updated version of the water injection system block was replaced. Check the codes, make sure there's no water injection system errors happening. And even if the dealer lets you, which I highly doubt they will, pull out that stone filter and see how corroded it is. The stone filter itself is like $45 from BMW. You'll also notice that once you get back from driving this car and it has been using the water injection system, the system itself will actually purge when you turn the car off. You'll hear it running for about 90 seconds or so. And what that is doing is actually pushing out any of the water that is in the system back into the tank, so it's not just sitting in the lines. So that is another easy way to tell, if the water injection system is in fact working, or if you have some other type of error happening. If you do not hear that purge when you turn the car off, when you get back from some spirited driving, you may have an issue with the water injection system. By far, the water injection system seems to be the biggest issue that most people have. Now, moving along to the front of the GTS, another issue that people seem to be having with these cars is the billet aluminum knuckles that are in the front suspension have a tendency to crack. Now mine are good, but I'll throw up a couple of photos for you guys. Knuckle on a few of these is actually completely cracked. One of the easiest ways to tell is you'll hear like a clunking noise when you are turning the car, but you definitely want to check that out when you get the car up in the air for the pre-purchase inspection and make sure that those front billet knuckles are good and completely structurally sound. It seems that they mostly crack in the exact same place, which is right on the end of the knuckle. So that was another thing that we checked, obviously, when I bought this car. Make sure those knuckles are good, and luckily mine are okay. I think that that probably happens mostly on these cars that are being tracked pretty heavily. One of the more obvious issues, which is kind of the elephant in the room with my specific M4GTS, is make sure that you have everything that the car came with from factory. So obviously my car does not have the factory roll cage. It does have all of the cutouts for the factory roll cage. It has all the mounting points, but it is missing the roll cage. So that was something that I worked out with the dealership that I bought it from. You know, if I was going to buy this car, I wanted them to compensate me and at least help me find a solution for the roll cage in this car. Now, sourcing a roll cage is not easy for this car. I&D used to make a exact replica of the OEM GTS roll cage. It was like $6,500. You may still be able to special order these roll cages from Germany, but again, they're going to be very, very expensive. Now, why the person before me took out the roll cage in this car, I have no idea. It's completely up to speculation. But nonetheless, the dealership that I bought this from and I came up with a fair deal, in my opinion, and I am actually having a custom roll cage built for this car that mounts up to the factory mounting points. That was the biggest thing for me. If I was going to do a custom one, I wanted it to replicate the OEM one, so it will look like a factory roll cage, and I wanted it to retain the factory mounting points. I don't want to be drilling any new holes. I don't want to have to cut into my rear seat delete. I want something that is going to bolt directly in, just as if it were, you know, OEM. Moving along to the front of the car. So you'll notice that my front splitter is in fact black. It's just wrapped in black PPF. Some people who are smart with these cars would take off the factory splitter and just replace it with a rep splitter. They even make like a plastic version, and then you can just store away your nice expensive OEM splitter so you're not destroying that extremely expensive piece. So when you are having the PPI performed on this car, just check the splitter and see how damaged it is. Mine is pretty beat up. I think what I'm going to end up doing is actually having the entire thing reconditioned. I'll have all the scrapes filled in, I'll have it completely sanded down, and then repainted in the factory acid orange color. Right now this car is more of like a black and white theme, but what I plan on doing is just buying a rep splitter and then just painting it black to just have my current theme. That way I'm not destroying one of the original factory pieces on this car. Everything that I've put on this car is obviously removable. I don't do anything that is permanently damaging to any of these cars or changing any of the OEM pieces permanently, just so, you know, when I do sell it, or if I do sell it, I can return it back to completely stock. I also have my acid orange 66M wheels in the other garage, so that way in the end I know I won't really lose any value on this car. It's pretty easy to tell if these cars have been tracked before. Obviously just get them up on a lift, look underneath, check all of the wheel wells. The wheel wells are probably where the majority of the beating gets taken when these cars are tracked. In addition to that front splitter, you will see a ton of wear and tear inside of the wheel wells, and that's a really easy way to tell if the car has been tracked or not. This car, I do believe, was tracked at some point in its lifetime. Does that worry me? Not so much. This car was made to be a track car, and like I said before, as long as you take care of it and you maintain the car properly, there really shouldn't be any major issues with tracking the car. That was the intended purpose of the car in the first place from BMW. So in addition to that, these cars obviously come with the carbon ceramic brakes. Now, of course, you can option carbon ceramic brakes on your F80s and F82s, but the GTS will have the carbon ceramic brakes, and you just want to make sure that everything looks good. Check the pads, check the rotors, have the dealership tell you about how much life is left on these. The great thing about carbon ceramic brakes is they will last a very long time, as long as they're not heavily tracked. The other nice thing about carbon ceramic brakes is virtually no brake dust at all on this car, and the stopping power is just incredible. I do notice that a lot of guys that buy these cars, they end up just swapping out the factory carbon ceramic brakes because they're very expensive to replace, and they end up doing something like a Brembo kit or AP Racing or something like that. The brakes on this car looked good, so I wasn't worried about it. This car also had a brake service done in its history, so I know that, you know, the brakes were addressed already at one point. So these were some of the most common things that I saw online when researching the M4 GTS and just kind of seeing what people were looking out for when buying these cars. Obviously, check out the forums. There's a really good Facebook group as well for M4 GTS owners, and people will just discuss, you know, the most common issues. By far, the water injection system is the hottest topic, biggest failure on these cars. You just want to make sure that yours is working and that hopefully at one point that block, that water injection block, was in fact replaced, because it is extremely expensive, and if you are out of warranty, it's likely that BMW is not going to replace it for you for free. Could get lucky, they could send it through as goodwill. Obviously, BMW knows that this is a problem or they wouldn't have made an upgraded part number, but just check to make sure that that injection system is working properly. I did have the oil level sensor go out on me. It was something that I noticed when we were doing the crank hub in this car. The oil level sensor seemed to be rather damp, like oil had made its way into the sensor itself. I didn't replace it at the time. I kind of just took a gamble, but I did think it was a bit odd that that sensor was moist. I drove the car for about 3 weeks after doing the crank hub and eventually did get a low oil level warning on the iDrive. Now, I knew that the car had the appropriate amount of oil in it. I knew I wasn't burning or leaking oil. I decided to just go ahead and top the oil off at that point to see if it was in fact low. I do have a larger oil cooler in this car, so when you are running a larger oil cooler like that, you're gonna wanna put in a little bit more oil than factory. But after adding another liter, I was still getting a low oil level warning. I didn't wanna put any more in at that point. I pretty much knew that that sensor had gone bad. So I just went ahead and ordered the $240 part from BMW, which is specific to the M4 GTS and CS, by the way. It is not a normal S55 oil level sensor, being that the M4 GTS and CS has a spacer in between the oil pan and the oil sensor, which allows for more oil capacity in the car. As soon as I replaced that, did a fresh oil change, the car was good and reading again at full oil level. So that might be something that you want to look out for as well. However, I think that's a little more on the general side. I've seen quite a few cases of the S55s having bad sensors and that part just overall failing. Other than that, this car has been incredible to own. It is a very special car. They only brought 300 of these to the United States, so it's kind of cool to have a 1 of 300. Who knows how many have, you know, been totaled or salvaged at this point, but it's just cool to have a car that's a little more special and unique, like an individual or CS or GTS. So I think that that pretty much wraps it up. Some of the basic things that I've noticed just from researching, and I wanted to make this video to share it with you guys. There's not a ton of content of people talking about the special issues that people run into with M4 GTSs. And if you're looking to buy one in the future, highly recommend it. This is by far the coolest and most fun car that I've personally owned. I really, really enjoy it. But hopefully this helps you out if you're in the market for an M4 GTS. Anyways, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching the video. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. But that'll effectively wrap this one up. Love y'all. See you in the next one. Peace.